The Monti Aurunci or Aurunci Mountains is a mountain range of southern Lazio, in central Italy. It is part of the Antiappennini, a group running from the Apennines chain to the Tyrrhenian Sea, where it forms the promontory of Gaeta. It is bounded to the northwest by the Ausoni Mountains, to the north by the Liri River, to the east by the Ausente, to the southeast by the Garigliano and to the south by the Tyrrhenian Sea. The line between the Aurunci and the Ausoni has not been clearly established, but the Aurunci are considered by convention to be east of the line. Through Fondi, Lenola, Pico, S.Giovanni and Incarico, altitudes vary from hills to the 1,533 meters of Monte Petrola. Main peaks include the Redenta and Monte Sant'Angelo. They include a regional park, the Parco Naturale dei Monti Aurunci, created in 1997. The mountains take the name from the ancient tribe of the Aurunci, an offshoot of the Ausoni. Both tribes were derived from the Italic people who were called by the Romans the Volsci, hence the Monti Lepini. The Monti Ausoni and the Monti Aurunci are also called the Volscia or Volscian chain. Coincidentally, they are all of the same karst topography and have the same orogeny, which is not quite the same as the Apennines proper. Geology. The Monti Aurunci mainly consist of friable limestone, which becomes harder toward Gaeta. The degree of faulting and cracking is so high that the mountains retain no rainfall. It sinks in to emerge as springs on the lower flanks. The stream beds are dry except for vernal pools. Most generally, the western central coastal region of Italy is the front of a subduction zone where the African plate moving locally from southwest to northeast is carried under the European plate. There is some counterclockwise rotation of Italy, hence the faults in the Tyrrhenian Sea slip both parallel to the shoreline and perpendicular to it. The surface rock in the Antiappennines was deposited on the floor of Tethys Sea during the Jurassic and Cretaceous of the Mesozoic. This lighter calcareous rock rides over the front of the subduction zone, uplifted by compressional and isostatic forces. Just behind it is a zone of crustal thinning caused by extensional forces, i.e., the subduction and the rotation cause a wave of compression with a peak under the Antiappennines and a valley in the Tyrrhenian Sea. The result is a karst graben, a half-graben landform with the Volscian Mountains as karst and the coastal chain of Pontine marshes, South Pontine Marsh, Terracina Basin, Gaeta Basin and Volturno Basin as graben. This landform began to appear in the Messinian stage of the Miocene, about 7.2 to 5.3 million years ago. It went on to mature in the Pliocene. Also in this time, volcanic activity associated with the faults and the weakening of the crust over the subduction created the volcanic zones of Latium and Campania, which intruded into the karst graben, mainly on the karst side. In the Pleistocene, the basins slowly filled with sediment from the weak runoff of the mountains, accelerating with the deforestation of modern times. Ecology. Fauna of the amphibians, Urodela, are found at around 557 meters and in Ura at around 314 meters in vernal pools, springs and wells. The salamanders are Salamandrina perspiculata, Triturus carnifex, Lysotriton italicus and Lysotriton vulgaris. The frogs are Buffa, Bufo viridis, Hyla intermedia and Rana italica. Radioactive pollution of the lower Garigliano. The Garigliano nuclear power plant was constructed from 1959 to 1963 by General Electric on the Garigliano River, the water of which they used for cooling on the border of the Monti Aurunci. It was intended to provide electrical power to the region. After several accidental releases of radioactive gas and water, the plant ceased operation in 1978 but continued to be used as a storage facility for radioactive waste, which was stored under the plant. Subsequent flooding carried the waste downstream into the Gulf of Gaeta. The effect on the ecology was toxic, one study reports. In fact, the genetic damage observed in studies performed with the micronucleus test applied on wild rodents from the Piana del Garigliano resulted among the highest recorded in Italy. Additional studies were unable to tie anomalies of the skull and teeth in the area's rodents to contamination from the power plant. Maybe they are attributable to a naturally high radiational level caused by the volcanic intrusions in the rock. The lower Garigliano remains sparsely populated. Bibliography: Romano, Antonio, Montanaro, Gianpaolo, Matticchia, Marco, Sabordoni, Valerio. Amphibians of the Aurunci Mountains. Checklist and Conservation Guidelines. Acta Herpetologica 217-25.